Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Sexy Business Podcast. I'm your host, Lewd Neko, and joining me is Spooky Dangerous.
Hello.
And today, our topic is going to be the wonderful world of monsters. Monster girls, monster boys, you know them, you love them, and they feature in quite a good amount of adult works of all kinds. So, this is going to be similar to our furry video, where it's going to be sort of a general overview of our experiences with monsters, some of our favorites, favorite games. But first, we should probably start with just a definition. So we are going to be distinguishing it from furries. We're not going to be talking about furries again. Furries, that's like anthro animals. Monsters are going to be more things like your snake girls, your centaurs, vampires, and werewolves. Those kinds of things. Though there is some crossover.
I think it's a bit like the classic vegetarian meme where they have all the animals lined up, and it's like, at what point do you stop eating them? Except it's like dog, cat, girl, and then it's like, okay, where is the line? Wolf girl, horse girl, dragon, werewolf, and so it kind of feels like we're going to be trying to pick and choose stuff that is a bit more on the scarier end of the thing. But THM itself has only recently leapt off into the Monster Girl genre with our latest Lamia character, Vela. And I think today is a good time to come in and have a look at other monster characters. That's why we are standing out here in the middle of nowhere in this creepy haunted forest, because we're looking for wolf girls.
I sure hope 14 werewolves don't sneak up on me.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's what we do in the bonus episode on the Patreon. Have to pay all that stuff. Next to all the feet pics and stuff that we've done so far. But yeah, did you want to open it up with, I guess, your monster awakening kind of media?
Oh gosh. So monsters are probably like when people ask me, they're like, okay, like what are like the like top five like fetishes that you just like can't live without? Monsters are definitely in there. When I was like not even like 6 or 7, one of my first like earliest fictional crushes was Lucario from Pokemon. Which is like, in that in between zone of kind of a monster, kind of a furry, but like that was what like started it. Is I like this idea of this non-human entity that seemed friendly and like you can kind of communicate with him, and I wanted him to be my husband. Like I was already committed to the bit. And then when I got into Tumblr in like 2012 and 2013, there was a really active monster fucker community. Like back before the Tumblr porn ban, this is what I really felt got lost. A lot of those Tumblr artists ended up going over to Twitter, but we truly lost our monster fucking community. We called ourselves Teratophiles to sound distinguished. Sounds more cool than monster fucker. And it was just like a really nice collection of artists who were creating like really unique monster designs. I will say it also tended to be a little bit more like femme focused, where like it was usually women designing like these sort of like monster manly characters, or just making scenarios for like X-Reader fan fiction and stuff like that. And I ate that shit up. I've loved all sorts of like monster characters. Like to this day, The Shape of Water is one of my favorite movies. Monster fucking representation in film. I saw that like 4 times in theaters, and I've showed it to so many people. And like this is a formative film for me. This is how you will understand me, because I would have fucked the fish guy.
Amazing. Yeah, I can't really think what my big awakening moment was. There was never like one formative media as a kid that I was like, yes, this is the thing that I want. But I have experienced a lot of monster media. Like, I mean, I guess Hellboy was really formative for me because a lot of the narrative content I've written has been very Hellboy esque in a way. Um, and he's just looks monstrous. His personality isn't at all monstrous or untamed or whatever, right? Um, as for other stuff, um, I guess it's kind of hard, right? I have seen like stuff like Monster Musume, which is like just literally harem anime of all, specifically monster girls. Um, but then again, like they're still 90% human female and have like 10% specific animal appendage. Um, so I guess you'd say that's kind of light. Um, Other stuff, I mean, like recently I've seen Interspecies Reviewers, which has some kind of monster gore content. Um, but then, as for more modernly in games, I think Ravager is the best one. Like you are a dragon, and your interactions with every other character is predator prey, and feels much more like monster fucker content than like this pseudo furry stuff that we get for a lot of things. Which like still like really anthro, but still very human. Whereas I feel like from this genre, I want the 14 werewolves railing me version of it, where it's supposed to be very primal, very feral, very, you know, aggressive compared to most of the stuff that we see, which doesn't really feel like that as much.
See, my problem is always when it's like there's like sexual dimorphism more than anything, where it's like the monster men are very scary, barely human related, usually kind of a little bit gruffer and more non-human, and then the girls are like, it's a girl, but she's got horns or wings or something like that.
Yeah.
I just, if it's in a game, for instance, like Corruptions of Champions obviously has tons of transformation, and you can be a monster, your party can be monsters, you're gonna meet a bunch of monsters of all sorts of genders, male, female, fuda, etc. But they kind of take the same character design like motivations to both the male and female characters, where they do tend to be kind of like right smack in the middle, where they do have enough like monster traits to clearly be like, okay, these are monster characters. But they do tend to lean a little bit more human or more anthro like overall, but they do that for both their male and female characters for the most part. So there's also some like attractive male monster characters who sort of look like hot guys with some added features. Cloud Meadow, I think, does that pretty well too with
Yeah,
its
I have
character
seen a bunch of that
design.
kind of stuff as well. Yeah.
Yeah, where it's pretty even across the board, where both like the male and female characters are drawn in more of the like still very clearly monster, and it can also depend on the species, but they both male and female will have that sort of like, oh, it's a pretty guy with some monster features or a pretty girl with some monster features.
Hmm. It's hard to find good media that does big scary women, just kind of generally. Because in theory, the ultimate bisexual monster fucker fantasy is the big scary werewolf guy with giant dog cock, and who's going to rail you with 13 of his friends, and also giant scary werewolf lady who's like 7 foot, covered in fur, gigantic rack, big claws, and she's going to come and steal your cum. Like it's still the same thing. Like it's still just as exciting and interesting and different. And I think it comes down to like a character design philosophy where it's you are not. It's like that still male gazy problem, right? Where it's like I'm still always writing and creating things that are servicing this very specific straight male problem instead of I understand that I want this to be like caring more towards a submissive male and I want like a really dominant woman, or I'm trying to enhance the features of the dominant woman by adding things that make her scary or make her more powerful, or create this power imbalance between the two of you, because that's what the ultimate werewolf thing is the small girl gigantic werewolf. There's a clear implied power imbalance between the two things, and then
Mm.
it doesn't equate like across any kind of different gender setup, right? Because people aren't doing big scary woman content. I want more big scary woman content.
I feel you. And that's like exactly why I enjoyed the Tumblr community of monster fuckers. Like for as much as people complain about like, Tumblr drama and Tumblr art style, it tended to be less like male gazy like character designs, both when it came to like male and female monsters, is they tended to want to make them scarier. There was like a definite desire of like, oh, we want to be subversive and make the girls actually look kind of scary and gross and fucked up and all that good stuff. So it's out there. It's usually not in games. It's like fan art, some fan fiction, which obviously isn't a visual medium. But like they'll have descriptions of monster characters who female or male, clearly sound like monstrous and like
Mm.
feral and powerful. I feel like that's what like anime usually gets like wrong or bad for me is like most of the
Yeah.
monster girl animes you were never actually threatened by them.
I feel like anime
You
plays it
know.
too safe because they're trying to hit too broad an audience. Whereas stuff like games, in games, you win forever if you dominate a small niche because no one else can ever compete with you. But no anime sits in a marketplace where it doesn't automatically compete with every other anime. Like same for film, like you're always competing with whatever else is in cinema at the time. Same kind of problem. Which it means it's harder to take risks, makes it a bit tougher to branch out and do those kind of I say ridiculous things, but for us it's not that crazy and different. But like compared to most other anime, a bit ridiculous and different. One thing I did want to bring up though, and you kind of reminded me of it, is that because Twitter algorithm is always like, yes, you looked at this one thing, and so now you are desperate to see all of this one thing. And I interacted with a VTuber's post or whatever because I thought that their character design was cute and I wanted to watch the clip. And now I get tons of VTuber content, but I actually see a lot of monster girl VTubers that have got like there's one at the moment which I think is new or something, but it's a scorpion lady and she's mostly human, but the face is not very human and has like pincers and stuff like
Mm.
that. But she can also toggle on and off like big scorpion tail and big scorpion pincers and stuff that like are attached to the body. Um,
Yeah.
I've seen some gremlin type ones where it's like the whole face opens up in teeth and they can like toggle on off how spooky they want to be. And I think that there's definitely a market for people interested in more of that kind of stuff. And VTubing is a bit safer because you're not specifically trying to make NSFW content, but it's definitely horny in some way. Like you're farming some kind of, parasocial relationship because they find you attractive. Um, and finding that niche that's unique, right? Being that monster girl and there isn't many other monster girls, or being that scary gremlin when there isn't many other scary gremlins, is going to help you find a unique and different audience.
Oh yeah, there's tons of like non-human characters in the VTuber sphere because it's like it's one of the things you should take advantage of. It's like you don't have to be human, so why would you choose to? I'm a cat girl because why would I choose to be a normal girl when I could have cool
Real.
cat ears? But there's also I think I've seen pretty much like every monster under the sun as a VTuber at this point. I've seen Lamias, I've seen centaurs, I've seen like all sorts of half human hybrids of all sorts of different animals. And some of them in the NSFW sphere will play into that intentionally to sort of capitalize on certain kinks. Like I know there's I believe Lamia VTuber who I think does a lot of like content related to like vor and like giantess and like domination and things like that.
Amazing.
Um I think a really good example for the VTubers who can afford like really nice rigs and stuff like that, like Project Melody, she's done a stream before where she made her avatar into a slime girl. And you could see through her and she had the little core that like slime girls have. And that was a really cool stream and that was something really cool that she could do. We are limited somewhat, at least in the camming sphere, because of the weird legislation around non-human genitals.
The
Like
dog collar rule.
most campsites don't allow anything related to non-human like genitals. So, like for example, you can get in trouble for using like a bad dragon that is like clearly non-human.
Mm.
Do people usually get in trouble? It depends on if the mods catch you that day. But if you're a really big streamer or if you're someone like VTubers who are monitored a lot more closely on campsites, if you tried to have like a centaur model with a horse cock, like you would get in trouble and you would have a really hard time like being able to stream that kind of content or sell that kind of content. So there are like some restrictions, at least when it comes to using like physical models. Though I know there's also plenty of VTubers who do the NSFW like ASMR. So like ASMR, Lamia wraps you up and teases you or like whatever it is that you're into. I've seen all sorts of like monster girl ASMR videos prop up.
Mm. I am realizing I'm gonna have to go and spend some time looking for such
Research.
things. Yeah, for academic purposes.
And I mean, one of the benefits of, the Monster Girl like ASMR or like erotica like audios and things like that is you can imagine what the monster looks like in your head. So, all you have is the voice, so you can imagine your werewolf looking like whatever it is you want your werewolf to look like. It's one of those areas where letting your imagination go wild can actually be better than if it gave you like a bunch of pictures in a row of what they want a werewolf to look like.
Hmm, that's true. So I wonder. Let's talk games. So surely there's a lot of monster games. You sent me a link, which is basically the whole tagged list for Monster Girl. No, it was a curator, a specific curator that looks for monster content, and a lot of the stuff that we saw just kind of scrolling through it was kind of just girl with dog ears or something, um, which I wonder if it's because the developers are playing it safe or that's just specifically the thing that they want and they've tagged it both furry and monster, or because it didn't seem like they were very spooky, scary, or very dominant or aggressive or any of those kinds of things. But what do you think makes a NSFW game character good in the monster fucker arena?
So I personally like, it's seeing like a cat girl or a fox girl. I do not count that as monster at all. I get a little angry when they're tagged as monster. At least if that's the only monster girl in your entire game. I'm like, no, it's not.
Well,
That's a girl
for
with
it
a
to be
cat ear
fox, right?
headband.
It has to be super pointy ears. Super pointy teeth, right? Like it has to be, and like maybe really pointy claws or something, and it would have to be completely feral, for me to call it close, right?
Yeah, I do know there is a really kind of famous Monster Girl game called Monster Girl Quest that I have not played, even though I really should. It's apparently very, very, very good. Not only have I heard, like, obviously, like, the Monster Girls there's lots of them, there's lots of different designs, there's lots of different encounters you can have with them, but apparently the characters and stories are actually really good. It's like what people keep saying about this series. So if you know more about Monster Girl Quest, go off about it in the comments, and maybe one day I'll actually play it.
Yeah,
But
it's
that's
really
one
hard
that
to
I
get off
know.
that backlog once you've been recommended something 1,000 times, and then to finally commit to it and come and play it.
I mean, it's a big enough game to have like its own subreddit and like an entire
Jesus.
wiki. So like people really like this because it's part of like I think a longer series.
Okay.
I don't think it's ever been officially translated. I think it's all fan translation efforts. Which is kind of surprising.
Okay. So yeah, let's drill more into character design because I think this is the make and break of the genre, right? And we kind of touched on this earlier before, where unless if it's big scary character, then it doesn't really feel like it counts. But I also feel like some of the storytelling involved has to be setting them up to be a big scary character, or they have to have a more aggressive personality or something like that. So maybe how about
Or
we talk about some categories of character and some of the things that make that better or different than more generic type stuff.
I think something I look for is like I want to see like lore, or I want to see how her being a monster actually affects her life, or like the way she interacts with you or tries to love you, or yes, of course, have sex. Like one of the things I actually really loved about interspecies reviewers, I ended up reading the manga, is I just really
Amazing.
liked the world building.
Yeah, same.
Like they get really in depth into like, okay, how would this kind of monster girl have sex? Like how would this work for her? And they get really creative because they go into some really like sort of unexpected monster girl types, like mimics, like the chest
Oh yeah.
is like one that I really enjoyed. So that was something that I really liked. And anytime I see that kind of lore in games, I enjoyed that. Like Corruptions of Champions has a sort of like glossary or like extra info that you can read about the sort of species that you encounter, and they give you like a full like here's the history of them, here's their physical traits, here's how they breed, here's how they socialize. Like they get really in depth with it, and sort of like almost a D&D fashion.
Mm.
And I enjoyed that aspect. It's like if you're not going to have this like really aggressively monster design, then I want to know more about this species and how it works in your universe.
Yeah, it reminds me of Trials in Tainted Space, which has kind of the same thing. You would
Yeah.
be introduced to a new kind of character, and they would kind of explain some things how they work. One of the main ones that I remember is there was like wasps, and it was like there's obviously a clear difference in gender between the wasps because of how they have to serve the queen or whatever. And then
Hmm.
if you had started to become like one, what parts of your body would change based on your gender and stuff like that. Or really early in the games, character Flan, who is a Flan that people really like. And when you go and do stuff with her, if you know more about her species as a Flan, there's different options you can ask of her. Because generally it's like kind of a slime girl, like generally. But then there's like a dialogue option where you're like, oh, I understand that your species has kind of like an ovipositor, and then you're like, would you do that for me, right? And then basically Flan turns into a Fuda type character. She's like, yes, here's my giant ovipositor cock, um, and then like that's like cool. This is a story beat that turns into both character development, but also like character design for the encounter, which I thought was really cool. Um, and so I think about a lot of that kind of stuff. I haven't done anything too crazy with Vela from Shackles of Elsman, our Lamia character, beyond some using the tail as if it was a hand type stuff. But I'm looking forward to being able to get a bit more inventive with that. Actually, how do you think best a Lamia character should be used? What's some stuff you think I should be doing here?
Like, what should a Lamia be doing in a Monster Girl game?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm definitely into the constriction. Like, there better be a scene where she wraps around me and squeezes me really hard because that was like one of the big appeals of like Lamia type characters for me is like
Yeah, Monster
it's
Musume
breath
did that a
play
lot.
and it's bondage. If you can also, I mean, so I would say Lamias are almost like they have so many crossovers with different kinks because you can also go down the route of hypno, because of the association with like Ka and stuff like
Mm,
that. Like people associate snakes and hypno. There's a lot of vor content involving snakes because they can unhinge their jaws. um,
mm.
I think there's a lot of like fun stuff. I think I especially like the predatory vibe in my Lamia characters. They don't have to be aggressively evil or anything, but I want to know that she could kill me. Like if she got really angry one day.
Swiping on Tinder and being like, could this person kill me? Yes. Maybe I will swipe on this person. So
I guess like what I'm looking for in Monster Girls is a threat level.
yeah, exactly. And that's why stuff like Dog and Cat Girls are much more cuddly and affectionate and more furry, whereas more monster stuff is intentionally supposed to be scary and dangerous and strong and usually with a size disparity, um, to make you feel like there is a threat level there.
I will say, I do think Monster Girl Island hit a good sweet spot for me in terms of character design, because they still definitely lean more towards the humanish, anime girl with monster traits, but I still think they do enough like unique things, like especially like if you look at the character like their Shark Girl, she's got this sort of like shark mermaid design going on almost, and her skin is a different color, it has different patterns. She's swole as fuck. Like her hair kind of looks like a shark. Like there's a lot of effort made into like making her character design emanate being a shark, even if she still looks like mostly pretty human. And her character personality reflects that. She's like very aggressive when she first meets you. So that's something I like is like I like seeing the attention to detail where like even the cat girl characters, they have little markings on their face and they have like different pupil shapes. And it's a small detail, but it shows more attention to detail than just being like, I'm gonna put ears on this girl and call it a
Hmm.
day.
Yeah, because in theory, the reason for a character to have these specific and different traits means that you should use them. Like, if you're going to have a Lamia character, the difference between the Lamia character and every other character is you have the tail, and therefore you should be using the tail. I see the same thing in like some succubus media, where like the classic spear-shaped demon tail, and it's like,
Hmm.
cool, I'm gonna use that to jerk you off. I'm like, cool, this is something that this character does specifically because of these demonic traits that I wouldn't be able to do or find a person in real life to be able to do. Um, and so, yeah, it kind of comes down to taking advantage of what makes them unique and different. If I'm going to find an 8 foot tall werewolf, then maybe perhaps I need to use that to my advantage.
Yeah, it's either use some physical aspect of their characteristics, do some weird fetish stuff, make a really creative like sex position because of their body or their abilities, or integrate their species or personalities into like how they behave or how they act during sex. So for example, if it is a werewolf girl, make her act sort of like primal and, dog like during sex. Like maybe she's really into breeding or something like that, or she only
Mm,
likes to do it certain ways, or she wants to be bit. Like, get creative at least in that aspect. So it's not just another generic sex scene, except for she has like dog ears and a tail, and that's it.
One of the things that I like about Ravager, because the difference is that rather than you being a prey main character and experiencing a predator love interest, it's you are the predator main character, and all of the characters that you interact with, for the most part, are scared of you just on the outset. Like they see you and they're like, "That's very scary." Um, and then based on how you interact with them in the future, that changes. There's a stable girl that you interact with and she's like, "Oh my god, that's a fucking dragon. He's gonna eat all my cows and horses and stuff." And then the way that you interact with her, she's like, "Oh no, you are actually just similar to the livestock, and you need help and care just like them." Um, and like some of the more like classic fantasy, like thieves and bandits types characters, where it's like, "I'm out in the world, I'm doing my thing, I'm here to fight with the noblemen or whatever." Oh, there's a fucking dragon, um, and like that does come through, and people can actually like you can interact with them in a way that makes them more scared, or you're like, "Oh, do I want to comfort them? Am I interested in something from them? Do I just want to eat this person? Do I just want to kill this person?" Um, and like a lot of that kind of stuff. Because you also take prisoners, and they come and live in wherever your secret base is, and then you're like, "Do I go and hassle this person? Are they bratty and they just complain all the time about um, being encaptured and like hassle me and make fun of me and stuff?" So it's really interesting way to look at it because it's like if this is being done this way where I'm the predator and how all these people interact with me, you can always just write it the other way around where it's like, okay, if I'm this character and I'm encountering a dragon and the dragon is doing these things to me, how differently would I react? How would this story be different? What would I be expecting to give or receive from the dragon?
I think altogether, like, regardless of if it's going to be a monster protagonist or a harem or like just certain characters or monsters, I think the biggest thing you can take away is just do something with it, something interesting. Because there's nothing more disappointing than when I see like a really cool monster character and then you actually play the game and it's like, this could be a human character and nothing would change.
Yeah,
It's almost like the sexy lamp test with
yeah.
like movies where they're like, if you can replace a female character with a sexy lamp, you failed as a writer. If you can replace your monster girl with a human girl and nothing significant will change, you have failed all of us monster fuckers.
Absolutely. And once again, on this sexy business podcast, bringing you the most interesting possible topics to come and talk about when it comes to NSFW content and games. This one in particular is a bit more about a particular niche, as we have done previously, and perhaps in the future we will do more stuff like this, where we will come in, maybe spotlight some specific games, talk about how the niche interacts when it comes to NSFW content. But we also do a bunch of other stuff. We do talk about a lot about game development in the industry, what it's like being a YouTuber, and some of the stuff that Neko has to deal with, working through the bureaucracy of different campsites and stuff like that. But as always, we need you to hit all the buttons that's going to make a happy cat for us. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and if you've got 13 friends that are giant werewolves, post in the comments your location so we can come and find you.
Please.
I'm begging. I'm literally on my knees begging. And once again, This is the Sexy Business Podcast. We come out here to come and talk about you about this kind of stuff in the NSFW industry because not many people do, and helping and getting an understanding for what kind of things are interesting and exciting and going on, we hope helps you, a potential creator, come and make some cool stuff for us to enjoy. Because there's not enough monster fucker content out there, and we need you to make more. You in particular, viewer, I'm relying on you to come and make more monster content, and then put it in the comments and tell us about it here on the Sexy Business Podcast, where we'll see you next week.
Bye bye.